Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to Gettin' Savvy in Health, Wealth, and Beauty. Important to note that everything is for entertainment purposes only. Please do speak and meet with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. And also, please meet and speak with your GP before making any health or beauty decisions. Okay, Melissa, it is a Monday morning. We normally do this on a Thursday or Friday, but we got a bit delayed.
Yeah, we had a busy, it's hard in the summer too, because cottaging and there's so much going on. So we were hoping to do it this Friday. I was up in Muskoka and we thought we might be able to do it in person, but then the day got too busy. And
Yep.
yeah, so here we are. And it actually worked anyway, because it was a little glitch with our last podcast that for some reason it posted on on YouTube and everything properly. But when it posted to Apple Podcasts, they actually reposted the podcast from the week before. So anyhow, so that just got re-released a couple of days ago. So people can listen to that, and then they'll have this one as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, trying to think, anything new on your end, really?
Yeah. I mean, so there's always a lot of health news going on. So the one thing was the big announcement by Trump, or from Trump's team, that he was diagnosed with chronic vascular insufficiency. I don't know if you saw this.
I did not see that.
Yeah. So they put out a public statement that he had chronic vascular insufficiency. So, to the average person, they might think, oh, is that a big deal? But it's actually quite common. We see it quite frequently, especially in seniors over age 60. So I was going to talk about what that means, symptoms you can look for, and what there is to do. So that was one thing. I was also going to talk about, we were going to talk about Coca-Cola and how Trump announced that he, has been in discussions with Coke, and they're changing the formulation here in North America to be more like Mexico, replacing the high fructose corn syrup with cane sugar. So we'll talk about what that means for your health. And if that actually is fact, and if that gets done. And one thing I saw, an interesting study on mice to do with Zepbound and breast cancer. So I can talk about that. And yeah, those were a few of the, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess, on my docket, what I continue to be really focused on is, and I hate to say it, but it's everything AI.
Yeah.
I've been in the business, the financial business, or I should say market, since, I really graduated university. So call it 1995-ish, is when I first got my job, on Bay Street. And then I moved to Wall Street quickly thereafter. But, anytime I saw trends in the marketplace, I never really bought into it. And I think you've probably assessed that from how I look and speak about the markets and stocks. So, for me to be kind of so focused on AI, I'm almost thinking to myself, like, I absolutely don't think it's a trend. I think it's very real. And so I thought, we talk about some of the different ways, because you're always interested in ways to play AI and invest in AI, and just to kind of keep abreast of all the different news items surrounding it. So one kind of story, that I found is interesting, and I don't know if you've seen this, like, this isn't the investing story. It is part of the investing story because it tells you how important it is, AI, for all these companies. So just to remind everybody, the AI companies are really like, Google with their Gemini. You've got Tesla, which to me is just one big AI story. They're putting Grok into the Tesla cars. You have Apple that's kind of seems to be sitting back a little bit and waiting for all of this to play out. And that's one of the reasons why the stock hasn't been performing well, is because everyone's sitting there saying, well, what are they going to do? How are they investing in this? But maybe they're the smarter players because they're not putting hundreds of billions of dollars into AI, and they'll see how this plays out. And will there be a couple of key players? Will it be a monopoly, or will it be, one powerhouse? That's a big question mark for everybody. And then there's also been criticism about Meta and how they've been trying to really, do well in this AI race and haven't. So what I found really interesting is over the past number of months, Meta has been offering $100 million pay packages to individuals with PhDs, et cetera, to join their team, to help develop the AI superintelligence portion of their business. So can you imagine that, we're talking about like NBA sports style pay packages. We talked a little bit about this, but I just think that that's, you continue to see them week after week. And,
When
again,
you put it that way,
yeah,
NBA sports packages, then they should be paying triple what they're paying. Because why should a sports player be making the money they're making? It's insane if you think about that
uh-huh.
compared to the scale of AI, right? So, you know,
Yeah,
anyhow, but I see that. It's funny because, in real life, when you live it, every time I go on Instagram, uh, it will prompt me and say, would you like to create an AI version of this? And I'm like, no. Like their AI hasn't really grabbed me yet. Whereas when I go on Google and I type in a search, the response it's giving to me is AI generated. So it's a very seamless transition from Google to Gemini, I think. I think that Google will just eventually, when you're using Google, will just turn into you're using Gemini. And I think with Grok, it's also an easy transition because if you're using X,
hmm,
it makes it quite easy to use Grok. And if you're in a Tesla, that's being incorporated. I feel like Facebook
yeah.
will have a harder time incorporating their AI. That being said, and when you talk about Apple, I feel like, they just need to have the money to acquire the best AI company. Because if you look at Facebook and their revenue, think about how much comes from Instagram. They didn't create that. They just bought that company.
Right.
I
Well,
think I
and
read
that's
something that Instagram has 1 billion users, daily users. Like, I'm
hmm,
not worried about that company.
about
Meta.
about Meta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's quite possible that, there are a number of winners in this,
Hmm.
in this race. And it is interesting to see how different they're all going at it. And how much money you want to deploy now versus kind of sitting back and waiting. There's always risk though to waiting being versus being at the forefront. But
Well, I feel
uh,
like we're all invested in those big stocks and companies anyway. I mean, do you own Meta?
I don't own Meta.
Okay, so I own Meta outright, but we also own it through the index, right? It's one,
Yes,
So, and do you own Apple?
yes,
Me too. And do you own Alphabet or Google?
yes, yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
and do you own Tesla anymore, or did you sell it all?
No, no, I sold Tesla because I felt that there was just so much volatility and there's still so many unknowns about where he's spending his time. But my original thesis, which is Tesla to me is the AI of everything as well, and I like to bet on Elon, that I've been thinking lately I could go back into it. But I want to go back to 1 second, your comment on Google and this seamless transition of doing a Google search and then it prompting you to their AI. Because if you remember, at the top of Aspen Mountain, you and I met some really interesting, smart
Hmm.
guys.
Hmm.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking. And one of them was not an original at Google, but like an early
Yeah.
employee at Google. And one of the things he said to us, which struck me, was that when you're using technology, the trick and what Google did well, I guess back in the day, was to make it feel like you're not even using technology. When it's so seamless
That's
on
what
your
I mean.
phone
Hmm.
that you don't have to jump to another system or like almost jump the train tracks. you that's how you win in the tech game, and that's what Google was able to do way back when. So it's interesting to me that you say this, because one of my key concerns as a Google shareholder, and this is the concern out there, is that are they going to be able to transfer all their Google search people to their AI product? Is that going to be seamless? So that's makes me feel better owning the stock, because that is a big question mark.
Hmm. And I also think, like, rather than investing or betting on the individual players, just my thought is still just invest in energy, like invest in the power, because all these different players, like, or in the chips, they're all going to, whoever wins, wins. But the fact
Right.
that someone's going to win, and AI seems like it's not going anywhere. It seems like it's the future. So how can we invest in what's going to power that future? And, all the things that they need, that they're all going to need, right?
Right. the
So
the infrastructure. So
infrastructure,
yeah,
I think that's the big play. Um,
one of them.
one of
For
them.
sure. Yeah. So, and that goes back to, like, let's just talk about NVIDIA a little bit. So, but I would just want to finish up on the Google for 1 second here. So I bought Google maybe 4 months ago because again, there was so much concern around whether or not they could really convert their internet Google search users to Gemini. And one thing I just wanted to bring up, so that seems to be, still a question mark, but nonetheless progressing and progressing to the positive side, and the stock's reflecting that. But I still don't think it's too late to get in at all. Like it's moved nicely up, but not, not too crazy. But I thought this was interesting. I just saw this headline this morning that Google's YouTube are the most watched video providers on TV in the United States. So again, YouTube's another part of their business, and it's the most watched videos out of
I know.
anything.
And they're concerned. I just watched did you watch the Netflix earnings? And
Yes.
and the fact that like the earnings were great, it was their best quarter ever, and then the stock dropped. And why? Because they're worried about its dominance and they're worried about YouTube being the number
Competition.
one streaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it's the number one watched. Isn't that crazy? Do you watch YouTube?
No.
I don't know. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, no, but my kids do.
Yeah, everybody does.
And it always goes to the kids. So when I first bought, I always talk about this. It was my bet, when I bought Netflix 10 years ago, it was because I was watching my kids. I had a 2-year-old at the time, and I was like, oh my God, thank God for Netflix. Thank God I can watch a cartoon any time of day. And I'm like, this is amazing. And that's when I was like, I'm all in for it. So now I guess if you have a kid, so think about the kids that have 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds now, or even looking at my kids now, what do they watch when they come downstairs? YouTube.
Wow.
That's
What are
what
they
they watch.
watching? What are they watching?
Okay, so they
No?
watch Carter's into soccer, so he'll watch different soccer clips and old games and soccer. And then they watch these stupid reality shows that like content creators create where they play with games and they create things. They're just watching, not a big box, like not a produced show. They're watching,
Okay.
yeah. And they watch, they watch people playing video games. They watch people in real life doing things. That's what they watch when they come downstairs. So it doesn't surprise me, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I don't watch YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
really, like that's not one of the ones, but I might watch some shorts sometimes if I get on a scrolling thing, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. But so clearly they've got the dominance in there. I'm glad you brought up Netflix though, because I know you own it, and I wanted to make sure you did
Mhm.
see it. But yes, the earnings. So this is important as well, just to mention that right now we are in earnings season, right? We see the results from these companies on a quarterly basis. Everybody reports, and so far so good as it relates to the earnings season. It looks as though on average for the S&P 500 that growth is around 5% or so. So it's maybe a little bit better than expected for the overall group. And 135 companies out of 500 are going to be reporting this week. So it's a very busy earnings calendar this week. Tesla's going to be reporting as well as Google, just FYI. But it's important that we understand the importance of quarterly reporting. You get an update in terms of how they're doing. And you also hear from company managements in terms of their current views and their outlook. Are they going to lower their revenue? If they are, the stock goes down. If they raise the revenue, stock likely goes up. So,
Yeah, but
so that, go ahead.
continue. Yes, sir. So I was just going to
So,
say that's why it was so initially surprising that Netflix had this great earnings report and then their stock was down 5%.
yeah, and part of that is, so their earnings and revenue did come in better than expected. Importantly as well, the company provides guidance. Guidance means what are we thinking, guiding for earnings and revenue for the next quarter, which also was above what analysts had been expecting.
Mhm.
But the stock goes down. Why does that happen? Sometimes there's a run up into the stock, into the quarterly earnings, so the stock moves
Ebbs
higher
and
into.
okay.
Yeah. So sometimes it's a bit of a sell on the news is what we call it. Sometimes expectations were too high, and or to your point, and you got it right, there's concern regarding competition, right? other content creators, like whether it's a YouTube or what have you. So that's a concern. And then also, of course, you've got the cost of creating that content. That's always been an issue with, any of these content creators, because it's cost so much money. Are they really getting it back?
Yeah. And I read something. Now, I didn't really understand it. You can help me understand. I don't know if it's true or not, but that they're saying part of the reason revenues are looking so good and earnings are looking so good is because the dollar has been weak. So really it's reflecting a currency exchange as opposed to true revenue.
Right. Right.
So from international users and I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. So currency, if they're global companies, can always be a factor in the earnings results. So I don't really worry about that too much because it fluctuates. But
Okay.
yes, can that have an impact? But I think that most institutional investors kind of look through it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, so I'm not selling.
No, I'm sure you're not. But just
Continuing to hold that one.
continuing to hold Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I do think Netflix should start making their own hardware. I think they should start making TVs.
Making
Because,
TVs.
yeah, because I think if it was seamless, Netflix was seamless into the TV. So like if they came downstairs, my kids, and that was like a Netflix based TV and they could just talk to the TV and it would automatically start playing Netflix streaming stuff, I think that could be interesting.
Well, can't they just use your smart TV and
But
get
still,
right to it?
it still involves clicking on Netflix, then looking for
True.
a show. Whereas when they go on the TV now, they turn it on and they go play soccer videos, and it just starts playing Netflix
Mm,
soccer videos. And it's like
hmm.
you said, what's the win in technology? Seamless.
Seamless.
Seamless. So you don't
Seamless.
even know what's happening. So if my kids
That's
came
right.
downstairs and were like, play soccer videos, and all of a sudden Netflix started playing, you know, I don't know, just a thought.
The o- it's an
Call me if you want
call.
more ideas.
Yeah. Well, you're smart, so they might want your ideas. The
Yeah.
only thing I would say though about that is like to be a hardware company, and that's the criticism with Apple right now. What are
Mhm.
they? People think they're a hardware company. What's a hardware company worth? Apparently less than software and services in the marketplace, right? Because there's a lot of costs involved with respect to the manufacturing, chips, etc. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Although Apple
but
has done well with their hardware.
their hardware, yes. And then
The
also,
iPhones still sell, everybody
yeah,
has an iPhone.
yeah. And that's probably why they can also afford to wait with respect to AI because they've got the distribution right in their hand.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. So that's what they were saying also, you need the distribution. So it's one thing to have it. And then, so that's what they're talking about with like OpenAI. And now they have this distribution partner pairing with the initial people that did, um, um, sorry, I'm trying to, with Apple stuff.
okay.
What's his name? I forget the guy's name. Anyhow, so they paired. So, I mean, we'll see.
Okay. It's just one other thing as we keep talking about this AI. And again, remember I said like I can't believe I'm talking so much about AI, but I am. But because there's different ways to invest in it, right? We've just talked a little bit about it. But also to your point on the energy front, right? So you've got the chip front, which is Nvidia, and just to remind everybody that the reason, if we recall, the stock hit $4 trillion in market cap the other week. And that was at $163 price target. It has continued to move up. It's at about 172 right now. And we had new news that the other week that President Trump was going to allow the H20 chips to be sold into China. So that was a real positive, and the momentum has just continued on
Yeah.
Nvidia.
Yeah.
And again, if you don't own these company-specific stories, you can own NASDAQ, which is really powered by these mega cap tech stocks. And there is that BMO ETF that I personally bought that you can use your Canadian dollars to get exposure to NASDAQ.
Yeah. I bought that as well. That was a good
Did
one.
did you buy it?
Yeah.
Did you buy it after I mentioned it?
Yep.
Good for you.
I did. It stayed in, you know what it was? It stayed in my mind. And I thought this segment, like this tech heavy part of the market, is going to continue to go up. And so I bought that.
Okay. And you probably just bought it a few weeks ago, but it's continued to do well.
Longer. No. It was a few months.
Oh, was it 2 months ago?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Do you know, I forget, like I lose track of time.
I know.
I really do. And so what I'm now doing, because I want to make sure I'm tracking properly, like when I'm buying things and when I'm selling, what my return is. And so I'm doing that with everything. You should do that too, Melissa. Like it'd be interesting to track it, because it would be interesting to know for you, like when you actually bought Netflix, and you're up so significantly.
So much. Well, I track it, but I mean, I go on my TD web broker, right? And it will tell me gains and overtime. And I don't know how else what do you mean to track it? Like in terms of?
Well, your initial purchase price.
Yes. So it will tell me isn't that the book value or the market?
Your book, yes, you're right.
Look at me.
Look at you. Okay. So, okay. You know what it is? I guess here's my thing. I have a couple of different accounts.
Right. So then
I need it on one piece of paper.
Yeah.
So you probably don't, if you have one main account that you like to look at, then.
I do. So I just look at it there, and I don't look at it daily. I treat it like my weight and a scale. So I always tell my patients, don't get on the scale every day. Don't take your weight every day, because it's going to throw off your plan. Because one day you might get on the scale and you might be up 3 pounds, and it might throw off your, like, what's the point of eating healthy? Nothing works. Screw it. And then all of a sudden you start cheating. Meanwhile, that 3 pounds might have just been a blip, a little bit of water weight, getting your period. You ate some salty food. Don't check it every day. You want to look at it over time. So I say, check your weight, on the scale when people are actively trying to lose weight, once a week. And for the average person that's just maintaining their weight, once a month. Just keep on it to see where it's going. And I look at my stocks the same way, because if I check it every day, I'm going to get emotional.
Yeah.
Little things are going to bug me that don't move the bigger picture,
Right.
So I think it's reasonable to look at it if you're actively investing once a week, and unless you're looking to make a trade on something and you're watching the price on something. And then other than that, like once a month, just keep an eye on it.
Well, okay, let's focus on the health, and I can appreciate that. And I think I'm kind of similar to that, but quickly on the weight thing, so crazy. So the other night we went to Windermere, which is a resort up here, and they have fabulous sushi. Like I love it. And then the next day I'm up probably 2 pounds.
Yeah.
Why?
Sodium.
That bad?
That bad.
No.
Yeah. The amount of sodium you eat and this will get into us talking about vascular insufficiency and also talking about the Zepbound study. But yeah, it can, because sodium, when you take in sodium to balance out, our body always we have to maintain a consistent level of sodium in our blood. So if we eat a lot of sodium, the way we keep it consistent is by therefore adding more water to keep the level the same, right? So therefore, our blood vessels are going to add more fluid to them to keep the sodium level stable, and we're going to feel bloated. Our rings are going to feel tight.
Oh.
And you're going to see it on the scale. And interestingly, I remember talking when I did my emergency medicine rotation, I remember one of the doctors telling me that often when they ask a patient that just comes in with an acute heart attack, a lot of the times they've had a very salty meal the night before, like a pepperoni pizza or something, because it raises blood pressure.
It does.
Yeah, because the same thing. And some people are more salt sensitive than others. That's just something you inherit in your genes on how you react to salt. But it definitely can raise blood pressure, and it can up your weight. But that's why I say don't check it every day, because that could really throw somebody off when really, okay, so you drink some water, you pee, and all is good again.
Really? Is that what it does? You just drink water?
Yeah. Because again, that's the opposite, right? Because the more water you drink, you have to keep that sodium and electrolyte level stable. So then your body's going to want to remove more water. So it's all a delicate balance.
Okay. So then do you eat sushi much? You don't?
I do. I don't eat it that often, but I'm careful with the soy sauce, and I try to use a light soy sauce. And I always tell this funny story about, so when Adam and I went on our first date 20 years ago, like a long time ago. Oh God, I don't want to age myself too much. Longer than 20 years ago. Okay. And we went to a sushi restaurant, and they give us the sushi and they put the little soy sauce in the, you put it in that little bowl beside it. So when I eat sushi, I take my sushi and I just dip it a little bit in the sauce and then I eat it. And Adam, he would take the sushi and dunk it in and and screw it around. Like I couldn't watch it. And I said to him, like, that's too much sauce. And it's an insult to the chef because the soy sauce is not meant to. Anyhow, that was it. That was the date.
That was your only date?
Yeah. Then fast forward years later, we ended up getting back going on another date. But I told him, and even last night with the barbecue sauce, he's got a lot of men. A lot of people eat too much sauce.
Yeah. There's so much.
The sauce has all the sugar and the sodium. That's why it tastes good, I guess. But if you're not used to it, and if you don't eat a lot, your palate gets desensitized to it. Like I can't eat that much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I dunk it in a bit.
You do dunk it? You're a dunker?
I do. I'm a bit of a dunker.
Just a little.
And then the next day, you know, that weight's going to be up, and it's kind of. But then I know it's just the sushi.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I have some strange dreams from if I eat too much sodium, I have weird dreams, and there is a connection between the food you. I don't know if you saw that. I should actually bring this article I saw a couple of weeks ago. I should talk about it next week. I don't have it in front of me now. How certain foods are related to certain dreams. So when I do eat a high sodium meal, or especially something that has MSG, I have crazy nightmares. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then one quick follow-up question too. I know a couple of weeks ago, I forget why we were both maybe having those, those seaweed snacks.
Yeah.
Which I love.
I like them
too. It's got a lot of sodium. But I think you mentioned to me that you didn't want any more or didn't want any because of the iodine.
Yeah, they have a lot of iodine. Like seaweed.
What's wrong with that? I thought we want iodine.
You do, but just not too much because then it can affect your thyroid.
Oh.
Yeah. It's got a lot in it. So I always think about, like, I like the seaweed snacks, but they're very high in sodium. They're very oily.
Yeah.
They get stuck in your teeth. Okay. And I think about the amount of iodine. So I just never have more than one pack.
Okay. And what does iodine do on
to have the whole pack? Actually, you know what? Remember we talked about, remember I told you last week, we were talking about Chernobyl?
Yes.
And they all got exposed to this nuclear energy. So they were asking around who has iodine tablets, do we have enough iodine tablets? Because when you take iodine, it blocks the radiation from affecting your thyroid.
Oh.
Anyway, it just made me think about it. So that's for another discussion.
Okay. Let's talk about the Trump's
Oh yeah. So Trump's vascular. Okay. So it was announced that Trump was diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency or chronic vascular insufficiency. So what is that? So my guess is he probably went to the doctor because he was having swelling in his ankles or lower legs, or maybe he was having dull achiness or noticing some skin changes there. So it's actually quite a common condition in seniors. I see it often. And it's more common in women than men, actually, and especially women that have had multiple pregnancies or that have wider hips. It tends to be more common in as well. So basically, we have valves in our veins, and these valves help the blood come up back towards our heart. So our arteries pump it forward, the veins bring it back. But over time, those valves can get leaky. So they're supposed to be one-way valves. So the blood's supposed to just come back up towards the heart. But if they're leaky, some starts to pool back in the legs. And so, I often think about things getting leaky as we get older. So that's the same thing. You can think about how a lot of people end up getting acid reflux when they get older. Mm-hmm. So we're supposed to have a valve that just lets food and acid go down, but that valve gets leaky. And so we end up rebounding and refluxing some of the acid contents up. Well, the same thing happens in the legs. So blood pools in the legs. And what happens is you start to get swelling. So swelling's not such a big deal in of its own. But then when the pressure builds up in the legs, it can then burst the capillaries. So you can see the ankles and the lower legs start to look reddish and reddish brown. And that's why. Then if the pressure really increases, you can start to get achiness and pain and itchiness, and the skin can break, causing an ulcer. And then if bacteria gets into that ulcer, you can then get bacterial infections.
Wow.
So that's, what it is. So in terms of diagnosing it, so often we diagnose it clinically. Like if I see a patient come in with those signs, They have hair loss on the lower legs, reddish brown discoloration, swelling. It feels tense. They're telling me it's full and itchy. I can make the diagnosis. However, we can then go a step further and do a Doppler ultrasound, and we can actually go look and diagnose it that way. In terms of treatment, treatment is really just lifestyle measures. So one thing is raising the legs. So often if you ask someone with vascular insufficiency, does it feel better when you raise your legs up? And they say yes, that's also a clue. But the key thing is, it's not just about elevating your legs. You have to elevate it above the level of the heart. So I tell this to patients all the time, and sometimes they just put their legs on, the ottoman or something, but it's not high enough. You have to get it flowing down. So by really elevating your legs a few times a day.
A few times a day?
Yeah. So if you're going to be sitting there having your breakfast, elevate the legs, like put them on a chair beside you higher up. If you're watching TV, put some pillows on the ottoman and have them elevated. So that's one thing.
But Melissa, that sounds like just a very, very short-term solution.
Well, we're just draining it. We're just fixing the plumbing. You're just draining the fluid.
Wow.
So let's get the fluid coming back to the heart. Let's help the valves. They're not doing their job, so let's help it.
Okay.
Right? So there's that. Then there's compression stockings, which people hate to wear, but they basically compress the legs and help pump the fluid. And then one of the biggest causes of vascular insufficiency is prolonged sitting and prolonged standing. So if we're standing this way, it's hard. It's hard for the veins to have to pump the blood up. It's going against gravity, right? So we want to help it out by being active, exercising. Use those calf muscles, because the calf muscles are going to help pump the blood up back to the heart.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if someone is getting this, we say, like, are you moving? Or are you just sitting on the couch with the remote all day? Or are you in a job where you're just standing for long periods of time? So, you really want to encourage exercise. And there's some things you can even buy online also that encourage your legs to pump and things like that. So, yeah. So anyhow, so that's the...
But it's not... Sorry, go ahead.
And if it gets really bad, I mean, there are surgical interventions that you can do. And the first stage of this, so vascular insufficiency can happen in the superficial veins or the deep veins. When it's the superficial veins, you can see it. That's varicose veins, right?
Oh.
You've seen these leaky valves on people, and they're the dilated veins. That's what it is. Those veins aren't working properly. When it's deeper, then you get this other swelling, redness, heaviness.
Does the varicose, there's, a lot of women, I think, who get varicose veins, they don't like it, so they get it fixed for cosmetic reasons. But is it a sign that, is that the first step, and then it will will it definitely go into deeper veins?
Not always, but there's a definite correlation. Yes. Yeah.
It's amazing how just, moving and eating well and not the sodium,
It all comes back to the basics.
It is.
All the fancy stuff you can do, but at the end of the day, like, exercise is so important. I read a study even on arthritis in patients' knees, like knee pain. Our knee joints, take a beating over the years. And so what can you do to try to reduce the risk of needing, a knee replacement or having arthritis in your knees? Most important thing is move it, freaky if you don't. Exercise, making sure you build up the muscles around the knee that stabilize it, making sure that you don't put, also the other thing with both the venous insufficiency and with the knee, weight. And that's why it goes back to these GLP-1 drugs. There's so much more than just aesthetic devices with weight. The less weight you have, the less pressure you're putting on your joints. And, the less pressure you're putting on your valves. Weight loss, exercise, it helps with so many things, which is why I also wanted to talk about, now this was different. So there was a study they did on mice, okay? So this was a research trial they did on mice with breast cancer. So obviously they gave the mice breast cancer. I didn't even know mice had breasts, but they did.
Wow.
So what they did is the mice with breast cancer, they gave them Zepbound. So Zepbound is Eli Lilly's combined GLP-GIP drug. And what they found is the mice that lost weight on Zepbound also had the breast cancer shrink. So the tumor shrank. So, why would this be? So they're just theorizing at this point. But one theory is that fat the more fat you have, the more estrogen you have because of aromatase activity. So by losing fat, you're lowering your estrogen. Estrogen feeds a lot of breast cancer. So they might have had the breast cancer shrink because they were getting less estrogen exposure. That's one theory. Another theory is that insulin sensitivity. So when you're on these GLP-1 drugs and these weight loss drugs, you lower your insulin levels. Well, insulin's a growth hormone. Less insulin, less growth of tumors.
Right.
Okay, so that's another theory. Another theory is that fat and weight gain is associated with pro-inflammatory markers. So TNF-alpha, CRP, it causes inflammation. So when you lose weight, you're decreasing inflammation. That's another theory. And then they're also postulating that it could be that something specific to the Zepbound is actually causing the tumor to shrink, independent of all those other things. So it's just, these drugs are just, they're just seeing more and more uses for them.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we've talked about this in the very beginning of the podcast days, which was the best way to stay young and live longer is being thin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the studies.
Those are all the studies. You just you just have to make sure that you're not too thin, that you lose your muscle and get frail, because then you have mortality associated with frailness, falls, hip fractures, osteoporosis. Yeah.
One question. So we had some friends over on the weekend, and a girlfriend of mine was saying that some of her friends, so female friends, they're seeing higher cholesterol levels in their, call it 50 and up. Why? I don't think of women as having higher cholesterol, but I know that they do.
Well, it tends to be after menopause. So estrogen is protective to the heart and cholesterol levels. And all of a sudden, when we take that away, then we are similar to men in terms of our risk for higher cholesterol. So, it's interesting with more and more women now starting hormone replacement, whereas this is only, I would say, over the last 5 years that it's become a bit more mainstream for women now to all go on to, some sort of menopausal hormone therapy.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll still see that elevation in the cholesterol, but yeah, it definitely happens with age.
But it seems though there's some kind of foods that you can help, that can help with cholesterol levels. Like I always hear steel cut oats.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're anything with soluble fiber. So oats, psyllium like Metamucil, chia seeds, flax seeds, beans and legumes.
Okay.
Also, you want to think about your soluble fiber fruits, like apples, berries. They can help, but it's also largely genetic. And I've seen and the thing is, I've seen a lot of people eat all these good foods. And also, it's about cutting out the bad foods too. So cheese is a big culprit. So cholesterol, the LDL tends to be reflective of how much saturated fat you're eating.
Oh, okay.
So things like, processed meats, red meats, cheese, butter, and also processed baked goods. So those sorts of things affect the cholesterol. So you have to add the good, take away the bad. But even if you do everything right, and I tell those people also, like, even if you're doing everything right, if the cholesterol is still elevated, we run this thing called a Framingham risk score, where it takes into consideration your sex, your age, but also other risk factors like high blood pressure, diabetes, are you a smoker, family history, and it puts it all together. And then it gives you a guideline for where we think your number should be and whether you could benefit from a cholesterol pill. And a lot of people are on the fence about, I don't want to be on a pill. But, if the data says that it's going to help prevent your risk of having a heart attack or stroke in the next 10 years, I just feel like, why wouldn't you?
And is that what cholesterol leads to? Heart attacks?
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever seen, like, it plugs up? Have you ever cooked something and then looked at the pan afterwards and it had a lot of fat and it's all gross and oily and stuck on the pan? Think
Yeah.
about that in your blood vessels.
Okay.
And it causes inflammation, and it makes it more likely for a clot to stick on top of it, block the blood flow, and that's going to cause the heart attack or stroke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we speaking of looking at things in a pan, Les and I, we were at a restaurant a while back, and we had this it was like, I think it was a ribeye that was hung and aged, and they brushed bourbon on it every day.
Okay.
Okay. It was delicious. And
I'm
then
sure.
we didn't finish it, of course, which was great. We often share now.
Mhm.
And I brought it home and I put it in the fridge because I figured I'm going to have it the next day. And the amount of white fat in
It's
this piece
gross.
of meat that I thought I was going to get all this protein from, it was basically a piece of white paper. And I'm like, I will never order
Yeah.
a ribeye again. Like if
Yeah.
I
It's such a fatty cut of meat.
beyond, I couldn't believe it. It's like my favorite thing.
I know. Well, that's why I just read this thing also that talks about, everybody's trying to increase the amount of protein they're eating these days, right?
Yeah.
So it said, don't be fooled by peanut butter. So a lot of people are adding peanut butter at breakfast thinking, well, that's a high protein food. And while it does have some protein, you actually have to think about peanut butter as a fat, not a protein. So there's certain foods you have to look at and put it in the category of fat instead of protein. Because
Okay.
I buy the natural peanut butter, that doesn't have any
Yeah.
additives, but the amount of oil, it's so gross. Like
So oily.
it's the amount of oil, it's like, yes, that's a fat. That don't think of that as a protein, that's a fat, which is okay.
Okay.
It's still got
Yeah.
healthy, it's still, a healthy parts to it. But
Hmm.
similar to you, if you're looking at increasing your protein, I wouldn't go with I would think of a ribeye as a fat. Yes, it has
Yeah.
protein, but it's just got a ton of fat. You always have to look at the first ingredient. What does it have more of? Fat
Oh,
or protein, and categorize it that way. Which is actually, I was having the other day, and this says I rarely have protein bars and processed bars in the middle of the day. I try to eat more real food, but I was stuck and I was starving. And so I needed something. And so I often carry just something in my purse in case.
yeah.
Had a Cliff Builder's bar. Do you know those ones? They've got
Yeah. Yeah.
more than 20 grams of protein. So I picked it up and I thought, okay, at least it's got more than 20 grams of protein. But the first ingredient, what do you think the first ingredient in a Cliff protein bar is? Builder's bar.
Sounds like saturated fat.
Sugar.
Sugar.
So I'm thinking to myself, this shouldn't be called a protein bar. This is a candy bar.
Ah,
It used to be called candy. This is a
you're
candy.
right. You're
Yeah.
right. It was a candy bar. We
Yeah.
don't even use
So,
that wording anymore.
yeah, but that's what it is. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that think they're having protein bars and this is a healthy food, and really they're just having it's just candy, it's sugar.
Yeah.
Look at the first ingredient and categorize that there.
Okay.
And better yet, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, no. I was going to say, finish that thought, then we'll move on.
Better yet, eat foods that don't have the ingredients listed.
That's
Then
right. Actually, one more question. In terms of keeping your cholesterol down, do you believe, I've never really believed this, but egg whites versus eating the whole egg? I've always ate the whole egg, but do you have a concern with the oat yolk?
well, no, it's just the yolk is the fat and the
It
white is
has,
protein.
but
But
but the
the
yolk
yolk,
has fat in it too.
pardon?
I'm sorry, the yolk has protein in it too.
Very little compared to.
Really?
So again, think about the first ingredient. It has more fat than it has protein, and
Okay.
the white is all protein. But the
Okay.
yolk also has healthy ingredients. It has choline. So I'm all about mix. So when I make an omelet, I do one whole egg,
Yeah.
the rest egg whites.
Okay.
So that's how I get a good sized portion, but I still get some of the fat, but more of the protein. Because if
Got
you're
it.
looking to just have a high protein breakfast and you're having 4 eggs, that's too much saturated fat.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't waste it. You don't need it. Up the protein with the whites. I do the
Okay.
same thing with pasta. So if I'm going to have pasta, I'll have just half a cup to a cup of pasta, and then I bulk up the portion size with zucchini noodles.
Okay.
Like I'm trying to make the comparison that the zucchini noodles are like the whites and the pasta is
Yeah,
like the yolk, and I
I
combine.
get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, got it. Just speaking of, we talked a little bit about, sugar. We talked about sugar and the protein bars. You mentioned Trump uh, wanting Coca-Cola to use cane sugar.
Yes.
And then I also want to talk about Pepsi, the stock, but go on with the cane sugar.
Okay, so this was a headline that Trump has spoken to the people at Coca-Cola, and they have agreed to have Coke like it is in Mexico, where instead of using high fructose corn syrup, they use cane sugar. And he considers this a big win. It's going to be much better. And I think this was also something that RFK Jr. was involved in,
Mhm.
which I mentioned because then you think of it as being a health thing. But the reality is, swapping out high fructose corn syrup for cane sugar is not going to make that much of a difference, if a difference at all, in terms of whether Coke is healthy. Coke is not healthy. Cane sugar also breaks down to glucose and fructose causes our insulin, which I talked about earlier, to rise and is associated with diabetes, obesity, and is not healthy. So I don't recommend having Coca-Cola ever, regardless of whether it's cane sugar or high fructose corn syrup. And if you are going to have it, it's a treat. It's something that you would have max once a week, a nice, fresh,
Oh.
glass of Coke. Just because I worry, if all of a sudden people think, oh, it's got cane sugar now, it's healthy, and they start having a couple Cokes a day, that's going to be a net negative on your health. These sugar
Right.
beverages are not good, and they are responsible for the huge amount of obesity and diabetes that we see. And to that end, Mexico, it's not a country I look at to think, wow, they're so healthy, the Mexicans,
Right.
like it's not
Right.
their. So anyhow, I do think when he said it will be better, I do believe it might taste better.
Hmm.
But as
Okay. Yeah.
don't think Coca-Cola has a problem with the taste of their product. Although we're going to do a Coke Pepsi challenge and
We
see if
are.
you can notice the difference. A lot of people tell me they like Coke better than Pepsi, but Diet Pepsi better than Diet Coke.
Okay. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that challenge. I've been
I'm curious to hear what Buffett has to say about this because, the media reports that he's drank 5 Cokes a day for years. And
well,
he's a huge investor in Coca-Cola because he loves the product. So, I wonder if he's excited about this or devastated by it.
well, yeah, we should find out. Maybe he'll
How?
respond to us. I don't know. But I do want to look at Coke and Pepsi stock. And, Coca-Cola has been up actually 7% over the past year and 11% on a year-to-date basis versus Pepsi, which has been down by about 11% over the past year. And Buffett owns 9.3% of Coca-Cola stock that's outstanding, which is about $28 billion. So he's been a big Coca-Cola shareholder for many, many years. And they are different companies in the sense that, Pepsi has a lot more in the snack space versus just beverage. And
Interesting.
then, yes, and with the GLP-1s, I think that's been a hindrance to, in my opinion, to the stock price. But what's interesting, so as we talked about, we are in earnings season. They just reported their numbers, and they did have some numbers that came in better than expected. This is not a growth story, right? It's like 2.1% organic revenue growth versus 1.4% expected. So they did, as I said, come in higher than expectations. But I think what's interesting is I watched a really good interview with the CEO on CNBC last week. People should catch this because they really are trying to, and this is where opportunities come into stocks and companies, trying to turn the company around. That's too strong of a word, but really put improvements. So improving the cost structure. They've closed some manufacturing plants, closed some mixing plants. They are, focused more on protein-based foods, snack foods, which I think would be a help. And, I always like to buy a stock that's kind of been penalized a bit. And so I'm looking at this as a potential opportunity. I've seen some analyst reports that have upgraded it to a buy. It's trading at about $145 right now. The price targets are $165. So it's not a ton of upside, but I feel like it's still,
They pay a
under-owned.
dividend?
No, they do, but not much.
Not much.
Not
Okay.
much. So that is a bit of an issue, right? Because you're, in some ways you want to be paid to wait for the story to turn around a bit. But I just think that that's an interesting one to look at if, in fact, they're getting into more protein-based foods. The other thing that they're doing is they're really trying to provide products that are affordable. So in this environment that we are seeing higher food inflation, we certainly know that in Canada. I mean, food bank usage is up 60%, but in general, we're seeing higher food costs. That's an interesting strategy to me, that the company's employing. But it's a really good interview that I would encourage people to watch. But the stocks had a nice bump up over the past little bit, just on the back of this. It's not a major turn, but the yield. Sorry, I stand corrected. The yield's 4.3%, so it's not bad. Not
so
bad.
I sent you this earlier, and it kind of segues into it. So, when people, once you've been investing for years, it's like, what you're doing. It's like anything else. You're still learning, but you feel a bit more confident. So a lot of people wonder, like, well, where should I put my first, $5,000 or 10
Right.
grand, or,
Right.
And so I came across this suggestion, and I wanted to chat about it really quickly and see what you think.
Yeah.
So it said how to invest your first $5,000. So the suggestion was 70% in index funds and ETFs. So an example would be like we've talked about, the VFV or the VOO, which is the S&P 500. So you take 70% of that and just put it in by, ETF that represents the S&P 500, or like we just talked about the NASDAQ, like the QQQ or the BMO product that represents it. Then you take 15% and you buy a dividend stock. So there could be something like Coca-Cola or Altria, which I want to say quickly. So Altria do they own Philip Morris? They're the tobacco, right?
Yep, tobacco.
So just to let you know, another study that apparently pediatric doctors are reporting that ingestions of nicotine pouches in kids have skyrocketed over the past 3 years. Accidental ingestions of these nicotine pouches, they're up 320% in the past 3 years, which goes to tell you, if you're an Altria owner, a
Which
lot of
I
people
am.
using them. So, if you want to take your morals and ethics out of it, but just buy a dividend-paying stock, it's okay. Some people think there's health benefits to nicotine. So,
by the way, I did buy the Altria stock a couple of years ago before I've never even known that kids are putting these pouches in their mouths.
Well, they're not doing it on purpose. It's babies and little toddlers are getting to the hospital with overdoses because they don't know. They just see it and they put it in their mouth. Accidental ingestion.
Oh.
They have to rush them to the hospital. So that's what's being reported on.
So it's their parents' nicotine pouches.
Yes. So the emergency rooms are seeing increased accidental poisoning.
Oh.
And a big problem was also the gummies, like the marijuana gummies, the weed gummies.
I'm sure.
Accidental ingestions of those. But anyhow, okay. So
so that's 15% into dividend.
Yeah. 10% into the FANG plus stocks. So the FANG would be like, now it used to stand for, I was thinking, what's FANG? So F, I guess, used to be Facebook, but now that's Meta.
Yeah.
A would be
Apple.
Amazon and Apple.
Yeah.
N would be Netflix. G is Google.
Yep.
And then plus would be Microsoft and Nvidia. So own one of those. It's saying 10% or a couple, but just a total of 10%. So what do you own in that group? You own Meta. You don't own Meta. I own Meta. Do you own Amazon?
I don't yet. I've been thinking about it. Okay. I own Apple.
I own Apple. I own Netflix.
Nvidia.
I don't own Nvidia.
Google.
And I own Tesla. Oh, sorry, Nvidia, Tesla. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think is in there too.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 5% bet on the next big thing. So here's where you can gamble a little bit. So that's kind of fun. So the example that this one gave as next big thing was Roblox. So that could be a fun one if you're talking to a kid about it.
Okay.
They put in Lyft, like I guess the Uber.
Yeah.
CrowdStrike.
Yep. CrowdStrike. Okay. Well, and the other thing too, to your point, and let's wrap it here, was that in addition to the AI plays, what powers AI? It's energy. So even though it might seem old school, it might be the next best new thing in terms of making sure you have energy exposure or data center exposure, which we'll talk more about next week, because if we are so underinvested in the data centers and the energy that powers it, just in general, when I say underinvested, I mean we don't have enough capacity. Yeah. Then how do we get capacity, and who really wins that war?
Yeah, that's why I bought Camco a little while ago as an interesting play on that.
Oh, you bought Cameco?
Yeah, Cameco. I didn't pronounce the
Okay.
E.
Okay. Oh, yes. I was like,
And also, I know we have
not
to
to
wrap now
correct you.
because you have
It's
tennis and I have work,
Yeah,
but,
CCJ. Okay.
and then I'll do tennis later and you'll go
Wait, wait,
back.
wait. Hold on. So Cameco, the ticker there is CCJ, and just to make sure people are aware, the BMO ETF
Mhm.
that I bought is ZQQ because I could use my Canadian dollar. Sorry, I bought ZNQ. So ZQQ is hedged to the Canadian dollar, and ZNQ is unhedged, which means if the dollar goes up, I benefit. We can talk about that later, but you can buy hedged or unhedged. That's a whole nother subject matter. But the point is, you can use your Canadian dollars. If you don't have US dollars or you don't want to use your US dollars, here's one way to get exposure to the NASDAQ in the States, which of course is really powered by those stocks that we just talked
Yeah.
about.
So, and because we have to wrap and
Yeah.
move on to our day, but I do want to talk next week a lot, and we can do some homework this week on this genius bill that just passed that Trump's signing on, I think today, to make into law, and what stable coins, are, what,
Okay.
who's using stable coins, how do we invest in this? Is it going to
Okay.
strengthen the US dollar? What does that mean for us? I think it was too large of a topic to get into
For
today, but
sure.
I think for next week, let's discuss.
Okay. Maybe we'll bring on an expert. So okay, I'm off to tennis. And you're
Tell
off to
us.
seeing patients?
You see, yeah, I have to see. I'm seeing patients today, and then I have a ladder match tomorrow. But I played on the weekend, and I played well, so my game's improving. But I don't know if you saw, I posted something funny on my Instagram. We play at the cottage, and every time I hit the ball out, or someone else hits the
Oh
ball out,
yeah.
I have to go through all the greenery and the bushes, and I can't find the green tennis ball because it's
Yeah.
camouflage. So I'm like, I'm done with the green ball. I'm getting pink balls.
I don't think they have them.
They do. Someone was watching and she said she just bought a pack from Port
No
Carling
way.
at the hardware store
In Port
in
Carling?
Port Carling. So if you see them,
I'll buy them.
buy them.
I'll go today.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Bye. See ya.
Bye.